The startup graveyard is filled with brilliant ideas that never made it. Passionate founders who poured everything into building the perfect product, only to launch and hear crickets. Teams that spent years in development, burned through millions, and discovered too late that nobody wanted what they built. This isn't a story about lack of effort or intelligence. It's a story about building the wrong thing in the wrong way, and it happens every single day. What if there was a different approach? What if you could test your biggest assumptions before betting everything? What if you could build a successful business without needing perfect conditions, unlimited funding, or a crystal-clear vision of the future? That's exactly what we're exploring today. The principles that have transformed how modern entrepreneurs build companies, how corporations innovate, and how anyone with an idea can turn it into something real without wasting years going in the wrong direction. This isn't a theory. These are battle-tested methods used by startups that became billion-dollar companies and established businesses that reinvented themselves. Whether you're launching your first business, leading innovation inside a large company, or trying to figure out why your current venture isn't gaining traction, what you're about to learn will fundamentally change how you think about building anything. Because the old playbook is broken, and the new one? It's already being written by those who refuse to fail the traditional way. Eric Ries didn't set out to write a revolutionary business book. He set out to stop failing. After watching startup after startup crash despite talented teams and solid funding, he realized the problem wasn't execution, it was the entire approach to building new ventures. His insights, born from Silicon Valley's most intense learning environment and refined through countless experiments, created what we now call the lean startup methodology. But here's what makes this relevant right now in early 2026. The pace of change has only accelerated. Market conditions shift overnight. Consumer preferences evolve rapidly. Technology disrupts industries before incumbents can react. In this environment, the traditional approach of spending months or years building something in isolation before launching is not just risky, it's almost guaranteed to fail. The lean startup method addresses this reality head-on. It's built for uncertainty. It's designed for rapid learning, and it's structured to help you find product-market fit before you run out of resources. This matters for solo entrepreneurs bootstrapping their first SaaS product. It matters for corporate innovation teams trying to build new revenue streams. It matters for anyone who needs to create something new in an unpredictable world. The core insight is deceptively simple. Most startups fail not because they can't build what they plan to build, but because they build something nobody wants. The solution isn't to plan better or execute harder, it's to learn faster. And that changes everything about how you approach building a business. Let's start with the foundation, validated learning. This is where most entrepreneurs get it completely wrong. They fall in love with their idea, assume they understand the customer, and immediately start building. Months later, they have a beautiful product and no customers. Validated learning flips this entirely. Instead of assuming you know what customers want, you treat everything as a hypothesis that must be tested. Your product idea? Hypothesis. Your pricing model? Hypothesis. Your target customer? Hypothesis. Your distribution channel? Hypothesis. None of it is real until customers validate it with their behavior, not their words. Here's a modern example that illustrates this perfectly. In 2024, a founder had an idea for a productivity app targeting remote workers. The traditional approach would be spending 6 months building the full application with every feature mapped out. Instead, she started with validated learning. First hypothesis: remote workers struggle with time management across time zones. She didn't build anything. She created a simple landing page describing the problem and a potential solution, then ran targeted ads to remote workers. Within a week, she had data. Click-through rate was high, but email sign-ups were low. Validation? People were curious but not committed. She dug deeper through customer interviews. What she discovered changed everything. Remote workers didn't actually struggle with time management. They struggled with async communication, creating context-switching overload. Her original idea would have failed, but because she tested assumptions early, she pivoted to solving the real problem. 6 months later, her async communication tool had thousands of paying users. That's validated learning. You're not trying to prove you're right, you're trying to discover the truth as quickly and cheaply as possible. Every assumption you make is a risk. Validated learning is how you reduce that risk systematically. This connects directly to one of the most powerful concepts: build, measure, learn. This is the core feedback loop that drives everything. Here's how it works in practice. You have an idea, that's just a starting point. You turn that idea into the smallest possible experiment that tests your riskiest assumption. You build that minimal experiment, measure the results with real data, and learn whether your assumption was correct. Then you use that learning to inform your next experiment. The cycle repeats, getting faster each time. Let's break down each component because this is where the magic happens. Build doesn't mean build the full product. It means build the minimum viable test. If you think customers will pay for a premium feature, the test isn't building the feature. The test might be adding an upgrade to premium button that doesn't work yet, just to see if anyone clicks it. That takes a day, not 3 months. Measure means tracking actual behavior, not opinions. Surveys asking, "Would you use this?" are almost worthless. People lie, not intentionally, but because they don't actually know what they'll do until faced with the real decision. Real metrics are actions. Did they click? Did they sign up? Did they pay? Did they come back? Learn is the critical part most people skip. They run experiments but don't extract real insights. Learning means understanding why something worked or didn't work, what assumption was validated or invalidated, and what that means for your next move. A practical example from the corporate world. A major retailer in 2025 wanted to launch a subscription service. Traditional approach would be building the entire infrastructure, inventory system, customer portal, and marketing campaign, then launching. 6 months minimum, millions invested. They used build, measure, learn instead. First loop, created a simple email sign-up offering subscription details, measured sign-ups, learned whether there was interest. There was, but less than projected. Second loop, offered a manual subscription option to early sign-ups, just a monthly email asking what they wanted, measured actual purchase behavior, learned which products people actually wanted on subscription versus which they said they wanted. Third loop, built automated system only for validated product categories, measured retention and satisfaction, learned which features actually mattered. The final subscription service looked completely different from the original plan, but it worked because it was built on validated learning rather than assumptions. This is how you move fast without breaking everything. Now let's talk about the minimum viable product, or MVP, because this concept is widely misunderstood. An MVP is not a bad version of your final product. It's not about launching something embarrassing. It's about finding the smallest thing you can create that tests your most important assumption and generates validated learning. The key question isn't, what's the smallest version of my full product? It's, what's the smallest experiment that tests whether this whole direction makes sense? Sometimes an MVP isn't even a product. Drew Houston, founder of Dropbox, faced a challenge in the late 2000s. Building file synchronization software is technically complex. He could spend years building it, but what if nobody wanted it? His MVP was a 3-minute video demonstrating how Dropbox would work. That's it. No product, just a video showing the concept. He posted it on tech forums. Overnight, the beta waiting list went from 5,000 to 75,000 people. That validated the core assumption. People desperately wanted simple file syncing. Only then did he build the actual product. In 2025, a fintech startup wanted to build an AI-powered investment advisor. Building sophisticated AI takes time and money. Their MVP? A Wizard of Oz test.
They created a simple interface where users could ask investment questions. Behind the scenes, human analysts provided the answers, making it look like AI. Users didn't know the difference. Within 2 weeks, they validated that people would use the interface, identified which questions were most common, and discovered that speed of response mattered more than depth of analysis. Those insights shaped how they built the real AI system. The MVP taught them what to build. Here's what this means for you practically. If you're building a new product or service, don't start by building it. Start by testing whether anyone wants it. Create a landing page, run ads, see if people click. Make a video, describe the solution, count signups, offer a manual version, do it yourself before automating. Measure if people actually use it. Build a prototype, test with real users, watch what they do, not what they say. Every one of these approaches generates learning faster and cheaper than building the full solution. And when you do build, you're building something validated by real customer behavior.
This brings us to one of the most critical skills, knowing when to pivot and when to persevere. A pivot isn't giving up, it's structured change based on validated learning. You're not abandoning the mission, you're changing the strategy to better achieve it. Perseverance isn't stubbornness, it's maintaining course when metrics indicate you're on the right path, even if progress feels slow. The difference is everything. Instagram started as Burb, a location-based check-in app with photo sharing as one small feature. Metrics showed people ignored check-ins but loved sharing photos. The founders pivoted, stripped everything except photo sharing, and rebuilt as Instagram. That pivot created a billion-dollar company. But here's the thing, they only knew to pivot because they were measuring real user behavior. Slack started as a gaming company called Tiny Speck, building an online game called Glitch. The game failed, but the internal communication tool they built for their team was incredibly effective. They pivoted to selling that tool. Slack is now worth billions. The pivot wasn't random. It was based on clear evidence that their communication tool solved a real problem. In 2024, a SaaS founder built a project management tool for creative agencies. After 6 months, growth was slow. Traditional thinking, push harder on marketing, add more features, lower prices. She looked at the metrics differently. The few customers they had showed incredibly high engagement, but they weren't actually agencies, they were in-house creative teams inside larger companies. The problem wasn't the product, it was the target market. She pivoted from selling to agencies to selling to corporate creative teams. Different marketing, different pricing, different positioning. Within 3 months, revenue tripled. That's a validated pivot. How do you know when to pivot? Look for these signals. Customer acquisition cost keeps rising despite optimization. Engagement metrics are flat or declining despite feature additions. Customers describe your product as nice to have rather than must have. You're constantly explaining why the product is valuable rather than customers telling others. How do you know when to persevere? Look for these signals. Core metrics are trending positive even if slowly. Customers are voluntarily referring others. People are using the product in ways you didn't expect. You're learning faster with each experiment cycle. The key is having clear metrics and the honesty to interpret them correctly. Let's dive into innovation accounting, because you can't manage what you don't measure, and traditional metrics fail for new ventures. Revenue and profit? Meaningless when you're pre-revenue. Total users? Vanity metric that says nothing about viability. Page views? Completely disconnected from business value. Innovation accounting creates a framework for measuring progress when building something new. It starts with establishing a baseline. Where are you right now with real metrics that matter? For a new product, that might be conversion rate from visitor to trial user, activation rate from trial to active usage, or retention rate after first week. These numbers are probably terrible at first. That's okay. You're establishing truth.
Next, you tune the engine. You run experiments designed to improve those core metrics. Each build, measure, learn cycle should move the numbers. If you change the onboarding flow, activation rate should improve. If you add a key feature, retention should improve. If the numbers don't move, you learned that change didn't matter. Then you make the pivot or persevere decision based on whether you're moving metrics toward where they need to be for a viable business. Here's a real example from a 2025 B2B startup selling workflow automation. Traditional metrics would be number of trials started, but trials don't predict success. Their innovation accounting focused on percentage of trials that complete the setup process, that's activation, percentage of activated users who automate their first workflow, that's value realization, percentage of users who create 3 or more workflows, that's engagement threshold correlated with retention. Baseline, 40% activation, 25% first workflow, 10% 3+ workflows. Those numbers meant 96% of trials never became engaged users. They ran experiments improving onboarding. After 10 iterations, 65% activation, 55% first workflow, 35% 3+ workflows. Same number of trials, but dramatically more reaching engagement. Revenue followed naturally. That's innovation accounting showing real progress. For your business, identify your leading indicators. What user behavior predicts long-term success? Measure those relentlessly. Ignore vanity metrics, and use those real metrics to guide every decision. Now let's talk about engines of growth, because understanding how your business actually grows changes what you optimize for. There are 3 primary engines, and most businesses are powered by just one. First, the sticky engine of growth. This is about retention. Your growth comes from keeping customers longer than you lose them. If you acquire 100 customers per month and lose 5%, you grow when acquisition rate exceeds churn rate. Subscription businesses, SaaS, membership models, these usually run on the sticky engine. What matters most? Retention rate, customer lifetime value, and product engagement. A 2025 meditation app example. They started focused on new user acquisition. Growth was okay, but expensive. They analyzed their engine of growth and realized they were sticky. Users who meditated 7 days in their first 2 weeks stayed for years. Users who didn't churned in weeks. They pivoted all effort to getting new users to that 7-day threshold. Growth accelerated because each customer stayed longer and referred more people. That's optimizing for your actual engine. Second, the viral engine of growth. Growth comes from existing customers bringing new customers. Each user brings more than one new user, and you grow exponentially. Social platforms, communication tools, collaboration software, these often run on viral engines. What matters most? Viral coefficient, how many new users each user brings, viral cycle time, how fast they bring them, and product-driven growth mechanics. A collaboration tool in 2024 provides a clear case study. They could either spend heavily on ads or optimize for virality. They chose virality. Every shared document required recipients to create an account. Every project invited team members. Every exported file included a created with attribution. Their viral coefficient went from 0.8, shrinking, to 1.3, growing. Each user brought 1.3 new users. That compounding drove millions in growth without ad spend. Third, the paid engine of growth. Growth comes from using revenue from customers to acquire more customers. If customer lifetime value exceeds customer acquisition cost by enough margin, you can profitably buy growth. E-commerce, marketplaces, advertising-driven businesses, these often run on paid engines. What matters most? Customer lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, and the ratio between them. An e-commerce brand in 2025 illustrates this. They could acquire customers for $45. Average order value was $80, but customers only bought once. The math didn't work. They had to either lower acquisition cost or increase lifetime value. They focused on retention, email sequences, loyalty programs, subscription options. Average customer went from 1.2 purchases to 3.8 purchases. Lifetime value went from $96 to $304. Suddenly, they could spend $100 to acquire a customer and still profit. That unlocked massive paid growth. Understanding your engine of growth focuses your efforts. Don't optimize for virality if you're running a paid engine. Don't obsess over acquisition cost if you're running a sticky engine and retention is broken. Know your engine, measure what matters for that engine, and optimize accordingly.
Let's get practical with the concept of continuous deployment and rapid iteration. In the traditional model, you build features for months, then release them all at once in a big launch. In the lean model, you release changes constantly, sometimes multiple times per day, and learn from each change immediately. This sounds chaotic, but it's actually how you learn fastest and reduce risk. Here's why it works. Small changes are less risky than large releases. If something breaks, you know exactly what caused it and can fix it immediately. You get feedback faster. Instead of waiting months to learn if users like a new feature, you know within hours or days. You can course correct cheaply. If users hate something, you've invested days, not months, and can change direction immediately. A modern software company example from 2025. They used to release updates quarterly. Each release took weeks of testing, coordination, and bug fixes. Users would get dozens of changes at once and be confused. They shifted to continuous deployment. Every code change that passed automated tests went live within hours. Users got small, understandable updates constantly. If something didn't work, they reverted it immediately. The result? Faster innovation, fewer bugs, and users who felt the product was constantly improving, rather than changing dramatically every few months. But this isn't just for software companies. A consulting firm in 2024 applied the same principle to service delivery. Instead of spending months developing a comprehensive strategy and presenting it all at once, they worked in weekly sprints. Each week, deliver one actionable insight, implement one small change, measure one specific outcome, incorporate client feedback. Clients loved it because they saw value immediately and could steer the direction. The firm loved it because they never spent months going in the wrong direction. For your business, think about how you can reduce your iteration cycle. If you currently launch new features quarterly, can you launch monthly? If you update your service offering annually, can you test small changes quarterly? The faster you can go through the build, measure, learn loop, the faster you learn, and learning speed is competitive advantage. Now let's address something crucial that stops many people from implementing these principles: the fear of releasing something imperfect. We're conditioned to believe quality means polish, but in the lean startup framework, quality means learning speed. The perfect product that launches in 2 years is lower quality than the imperfect product that launches in 2 months and improves based on user feedback. Here's the mental shift you need to make. Your first version isn't your reputation, it's your education. Nobody judges Apple today based on the first iPhone, even though it lacked basic features competitors had. They judge them on their ability to learn and improve. Your early adopters aren't looking for perfection, they're looking for solutions to real problems. If you solve their problem even partially, they'll forgive rough edges. And every day you spend polishing before launch is a day you're not learning from real users. A compelling example from 2024, a productivity tool founder spent 8 months building what he thought was the perfect task management system. Beautiful interface, sophisticated features, seamless integrations. He launched to crickets. Users found it confusing and over-engineered.
Meanwhile, a competitor launched a basic tool in 6 weeks. It was ugly and limited, but it solved one specific problem really well. Users loved it. Over the next 6 months, the competitor added features based on user requests. By month 8, when the perfectionist was just launching, the competitor had a thriving user base and a product refined by thousands of hours of real usage. The competitor won not through better initial execution, but through faster learning. This doesn't mean ship garbage. It means ship the minimum that creates value and enables learning. Make it functional, make it valuable, but don't make it perfect. Perfect is the enemy of learning. For you, practically, identify the core value proposition, the one problem you solve better than alternatives. Build the absolute minimum that delivers that value. Everything else is phase 2. Ship it to a small group of early users who understand its early stage. Learn from their real usage. Improve based on what you learn. Repeat weekly or daily, not quarterly. That's how you build something people actually want, instead of something you think is perfect. Let's talk about the role of vision in all of this. Because some people misunderstand lean startup as meaning you have no vision or long-term plan. That's completely wrong. The vision is your destination. The lean startup methodology is how you navigate to get there. Your vision might be to revolutionize education, or to build the best project management tool, or to make healthy food accessible to everyone. That vision doesn't change constantly, but your strategy for achieving that vision should be flexible and based on validated learning. Think of it like navigating across an ocean. Your destination is fixed, but the exact route depends on winds, currents, and weather you can't predict in advance. Rigid adherence to the original route guarantees failure. Constant adjustment based on real conditions gets you there. Airbnb's vision was always to help people belong anywhere through home sharing, but their strategy pivoted multiple times. They started with air mattresses at conferences, then entire homes, then experiences, then long-term stays. The vision remained constant. The strategy evolved based on what they learned worked. Tesla's vision is accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, but their strategy shifted from starting with expensive roadsters to prove the concept, then Model S to build the brand, then Model 3 to reach mass market, then energy products. The vision never changed. The path evolved based on validated learning about markets, technology, and operations. For your business, be crystal clear on vision, but flexible on strategy. Your vision is why you exist, the change you want to create, the problem you want to solve. Your strategy is your current best hypothesis for how to achieve that vision, and you should be willing to pivot your strategy whenever validated learning shows a better path to your vision. This distinction keeps you grounded in purpose while remaining agile in execution. We need to address a critical challenge: implementing lean startup principles inside large organizations. Startups have advantages: speed, flexibility, and nothing to lose. Large companies have different challenges: existing customers to protect, established processes, risk-averse cultures, and stakeholders demanding predictability. But innovation is just as critical for established companies, maybe more so. Markets change, competitors emerge, and yesterday's success doesn't guarantee tomorrow's survival. So how do you implement lean startup inside a large organization? First, create protected space for innovation. Don't force new ventures to follow the same processes as core business. They need different metrics, different timelines, and different rules. A major bank in 2025 created an innovation lab that operated like an internal startup. Separate budget, separate KPIs focused on learning speed rather than immediate revenue, and permission to fail fast. They launched a new digital banking product that would have taken 3 years through normal channels in 8 months. Second, use validated learning to get stakeholder buy-in. Executives are skeptical of ideas, but they respond to data. Instead of pitching a complete plan, pitch an experiment. Instead of asking for millions, ask for enough to test critical assumptions. Then show results and ask for the next experiment. A consumer goods company in 2024 wanted to launch a sustainable product line. Instead of proposing a full launch, they proposed testing one product in one region for 3 months. Cost was minimal, results were clear. Customers would pay premium prices for verified sustainability. That data unlocked budget for full expansion. Third, build innovation portfolios, not single bets. Run multiple small experiments in parallel. Most will fail, but failures are cheap and generate learning. The few that succeed can scale. This is how you de-risk innovation. A tech company in 2025 ran 12 innovation experiments simultaneously, each with small teams and 3-month horizons. 9 failed to find product-market fit and were shut down. 2 showed promise and got extended funding. 1 found explosive growth and became a new business unit generating 8 figures in revenue. Total innovation investment was less than one traditional product development cycle, but learning and results were dramatically better. The key is changing the culture from failure is bad to failure to learn is bad. Every experiment produces validated learning. That learning has value, even when the specific idea doesn't work. Let's talk about what holds people back from implementing these principles. The most common barrier is psychological, not practical. We're taught to plan thoroughly, execute flawlessly, and avoid mistakes. Lean startup requires the opposite mindset. Plan minimally, experiment constantly, and embrace mistakes as learning. This creates cognitive dissonance. There's also the sunk cost fallacy. You've invested time and money in your current approach. Pivoting feels like admitting waste. But continuing down the wrong path wastes more. The investment is gone regardless. The only question is what you do next. There's fear of looking foolish. Launching an MVP means releasing something imperfect. Pivoting means admitting your first direction was wrong. But the only people who never look foolish are those who never try anything new. And there's the illusion of control. Planning feels safe because you control the plan. Experimenting feels risky because you can't control the results. But that's backwards. The plan is an illusion. The market will do what it does regardless. Experimenting gives you real information to make better decisions. Here's how to overcome these barriers. Start small. You don't have to transform your entire approach overnight. Pick one assumption and test it. One experiment. See what you learn. The results will convince you more than any argument. Find allies. Connect with others implementing lean principles. Their experiences and support make the journey easier. Many cities have lean startup meetups and communities. Reframe failure. Every experiment that doesn't work out is successful if you learned something valuable. You're not failing, you're learning. And learning faster than competitors is how you win. Celebrate learning. Don't just celebrate wins, celebrate validated learning. When you discover an assumption was wrong before wasting months building the wrong thing, that's a victory worth celebrating. The entrepreneurial journey is fundamentally about navigating uncertainty. You're trying to create something that doesn't exist for customers whose needs you don't fully understand in markets that are constantly changing. Traditional business planning pretends you can eliminate that uncertainty through better analysis and more detailed plans. Lean Startup acknowledges the uncertainty and gives you tools to navigate through it. Think about the most successful companies of the past decade. How many of them are doing exactly what they set out to do originally? Almost none. YouTube started as a video dating site. Twitter started as a podcasting platform. Pinterest started as a shopping app. They all pivoted based on validated learning. The founders who succeeded weren't those with the best original ideas. They were those who learned fastest from reality. This is liberating when you really internalize it. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need perfect certainty. You don't need to predict the future. You just need to learn faster than you run out of resources. You need to test assumptions before betting everything. You need to build based on evidence rather than opinions. You need to stay focused on creating real value for real customers. That's achievable, that's practical, and that's how modern businesses are built.
As we bring this together, let's crystallize the core principles into actionable insights you can implement immediately. First, treat your business idea as a hypothesis, not a plan. Write down your key assumptions. Who is your customer? What problem do they have? Why will they choose your solution? How will you reach them? What will they pay? These are all hypotheses. Test them systematically before building extensively. Second, optimize for learning speed over execution perfection. The team that learns fastest wins. Every decision should be evaluated on how much will this teach us and how quickly will we learn it. If it doesn't generate validated learning, question whether it's worth doing now. Third, talk to customers constantly, not to pitch, but to learn. Understand their problems deeply. Watch how they currently solve those problems. Test whether your solution actually helps. Listen to what they do more than what they say. Behavior is truth. Fourth, measure what matters and ignore vanity metrics. Define your key metrics, the numbers that actually indicate whether your business model works. Track them religiously. Let them guide decisions. Have the courage to change course when metrics show your current path isn't working. Fifth, build community and support systems. This journey is hard. Surround yourself with other entrepreneurs, mentors who've walked this path, and advisors who can provide perspective when you're too close to see clearly. Learn from their experiences and share your own. The world needs more people willing to create, to innovate, to solve problems in new ways, but it doesn't need more people following broken playbooks that lead to predictable failure. The lean startup methodology isn't just a set of tactics, it's a fundamentally different way of thinking about building businesses. It's the recognition that in conditions of extreme uncertainty, learning is more valuable than planning, experimentation is less risky than commitment, and evidence beats opinion every time. Whether you're in a garage working on your first startup, inside a corporation trying to drive innovation, or somewhere in between, these principles apply. Start where you are. Test your riskiest assumption this week. Build the smallest experiment that generates real learning. Measure what actually matters. Learn from what you discover. Then do it again, faster. That cycle, repeated relentlessly, is how you build something that matters, how you create value that didn't exist before, how you turn ideas into impact. The path won't be linear. You'll pivot, sometimes multiple times. You'll abandon ideas you loved. You'll discover that customers want something different than you imagined. And all of that is perfect, because you'll be learning your way to success rather than planning your way to failure. You'll be building something people actually want rather than something you hoped they'd want. You'll be creating a business that works in reality, not just in your imagination. And that makes all the difference. The greatest businesses of our time weren't built by people who had all the answers at the start. They were built by people who had the courage to test their assumptions, the humility to learn from reality, and the persistence to keep iterating until they found what worked. You can do the same. Start today. Test one assumption. Build one experiment. Measure one real metric. Learn one validated insight. Then do it again tomorrow. That's how you build the future, one experiment at a time, one insight at a time, one customer at a time. And when you look back months or years from now, you'll be amazed at how far that journey took you and how different the destination looks from where you thought you were heading. But you'll be exactly where you need to be because you learned your way there. Now go build something worth building.